Hi, Victoria.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, and I'm excited. I'm really pleased that you were willing to talk with us today. So
Oh,
thank you.
yeah, well, thank you. I'm
All
excited as
right.
well.
Yay, two of
Yeah.
us. Woohoo! All right. Well, let's get started. And I'd love to start by introducing you, Victoria. Um, Victoria Storr is a licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed school psychologist in private practice who specializes in working with teens and adult women.
Mhm.
Her passion is helping empower clients to overcome the challenges that they face, provide skills training, and work with clients to define for themselves what they want out of life and how to get it. I love that.
Me too.
It's a good punch. Prior to starting her private practice in 2019, she worked as a school psychologist for 5 years, providing therapy in the public high school setting while studying the teenage brain.
Yes.
All right. Wonderful. Well, let's begin with a question, Victoria. Um, as we all know, it is a time of higher stress levels. It's a time of increased anxiety, during the pandemic, and in many ways, it seems that there's for folks kind of the shared sense of we're not all at our best right now, and there can be more kind of reactivity to our teens, our other children, our loved ones, our colleagues, everyone. But we're here, of course, to talk about our teens. And so I'm wondering if you've got some suggestions for us, for parents specifically, in terms of helping us to manage this reactivity and how we're showing up and how we're interacting with our teens.
Yes, I do. And in fact, this is one of my favorite things to talk about in my practice because I feel like no matter what age you are, whether you're a teen or you're an adult, it seems to be that we all kind of struggle with reactivity in different ways. And when we're in that reactive state, we either say or do things that we don't necessarily always mean or aren't at our highest purpose or aren't how we want to show up, and then have to go back and kind of clean that up. And so I feel like learning how to self-regulate and learning how to self-manage a little bit better is in all of our best interest. So one of the things I really love to share with clients and I think is really helpful and useful for our viewers is learning a little bit more about the brain and what happens in the brain when we come into this dysregulated state. And one of the best ways I know how to do this comes from Dr. Dan Siegel at UCLA. And he has something called the handy model of the brain. And so he actually uses his hand, and I'm going to do that with us today to show you. But what he says is basically if we can understand what's going on inside our brain a bit better, we can understand how to respond to it better as well. So if we imagine that this is our brain, and we'll start here and say that this is the brain stem here in the palm, and this thumb folding over is our amygdala, and together they kind of form that system that deals with self-regulation and deals with also when we get activated or reactive and it turns on the fight, flight, or freeze system.
Mm-hmm.
And then folding over is our cortex, and what we're particularly interested in is our prefrontal cortex, which is the place that we think out of to make long-term plans, to think what is the best decision to make right now, just kind of our more mindful center, if you will.
Okay.
And I think it's really interesting to note that this prefrontal cortex is not finished developing in teenagers until 25. And so I think one of the really important first things for parents to understand is that oftentimes our teens, even all the way up until this kind of extended adolescent period until 25, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. And so they tend to make decisions more out of what feels good right now and what would be cool to my friends and more social based decisions than kind of our more rational brain might make that says, okay, well, I know if I don't go to bed on time, that I'm going to be tired in the morning, kind of how adults think. Teens don't have a lot of those same skills. They're continuing to develop all the way until they're 25. So this is excuse me, this is just an important thing to recognize.
Oh, very important. That's really
To start
helpful.
with, is that we have to have different expectations because it's really different in the brain regarding development at this point.
Okay, good.
Okay, but going back to our brain, typically when we're regulated or not in a heightened state of arousal, both of these pieces are talking to each other. So the prefrontal cortex is down here talking to this limbic system, and we're able to access our emotions, but we're not overwhelmed by our emotions.
Okay.
And this is important because this is how you and I are talking right now. We're talking and we're being able to kind of access all parts of our brain and be calm and have conversation. But what often happens when we get into an argument or when we're having a disagreement with somebody is we do something what Dr. Siegel calls flip your lid. And so what happens is now the prefrontal cortex is no longer communicating with the limbic system. And so instead what we're doing is we're acting out of this system alone without thinking very much about what's the best decision to be making here, or what's the smartest thing to be saying? What am I trying to communicate? Unfortunately, we're no longer accessing this part of our brain, and we're really focused a lot here in our limbic system, making decisions based on one of our 3 patterns, which is fight, flight, or freeze. So I typically ask people, what are you? You know, when you're feeling when you're in an argument, when you're feeling really aroused, when you're really stressed out, are you somebody who fights, who's like, excuse me? You know, are you somebody who just shuts down and freezes and kind of shrinks into themselves? Or are you somebody who just tries to get away? You know what, I'm not dealing with this right now. I'm not dealing with you. And I just avoid and try to leave.
Got it. Got it. And then I imagine that's interesting to think about how we respond, and then how maybe our teen responds, right? Do they handle it differently?
They have different styles. So oftentimes what's happening is, so we're trying to have a conversation with our teen, but we're upset because whatever may have happened. Mary Ellen used the example of like, there's a dent in the car, right? So I need to talk to you about this, and I'm upset because, you know, and I have a lot of reasons, and I'm trying to tell you. And unfortunately, when I'm talking to my teen out of this more aroused state, usually what happens is their lid also flips. So it's very hard to stay kind of grounded and connected when somebody's coming at you in an emotional state.
Absolutely. Okay. Right. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so typically what our teen's gonna do is also flip their lid. And this is not a good place to be, because now neither of us are being very rational, and both of us are kind of acting out of this more emotional, dysregulated state, saying things that we might not mean.
Yeah, not leading to a positive outcome.
Leading to a power struggle, all kinds of things that we know is not healthy and helpful.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just can't help ourselves. So why this is so important to recognize when we flipped our lid is because what we really need to do, instead of continuing with the argument or continuing with the lesson we're trying to teach, is bring ourselves back down to be more regulated, so that we're still able to access our emotion. We're still able to say why we're upset and what we'd like to see from our teen, but we're not becoming overwhelmed with our emotion.
Okay.
So how we get this system back on is really kind of what I wanted to share with you today.
Yeah.
Is what are the things that we can do to learn how to self-regulate, to learn to get this system back on, so that we can come back to our teen and say, hey, you know, here's the problem. This is the solutions I'm thinking about, but not do it in a way that creates defensiveness or criticism, comes out in ways that aren't helpful.
Okay.
So this is going to look different for a lot of different people. Our number one first step is noticing when our lid is flipped. So just noticing, I'm not feeling rational right now. I'm not feeling kind of put together and like in control.
Oftentimes, not going to say something I'm going to feel good about after.
Yeah. Oftentimes what this feels like for people is their heart is pounding. Maybe they notice their breathing is different. Maybe their palms are sweaty. I get this feeling in my chest of like, ooh, it's a fight. I'm a fight. So when I'm a fight, and I can feel the fight. I can feel it coming up saying like, oh, you think you can mess with me? This is the feeling that comes out, whether that's the other person's intention or not.
Got it.
And whether that's actually happening or not, that's kind of what happens when my lid gets
You
flipped.
can recognize that. Yeah.
I can feel it. And so typically what we're wanting to do is feel it in our body and say, oh, this is not a good time. And so one of the things that Mary Ellen talked about in the previous conversation was being able to take a break and say, right now is not a good time for us to be talking about this.
Yeah.
And making that be okay. So not like, I don't want to talk to you, we're not getting anywhere, not in a way that's shaming or demeaning, but in a way that's saying, I think we both need a minute. I think we both need a bit of time to calm back down and come back together and try to find a solution here.
Yes. Yes. So wise. Okay.
So, and I think that this idea of taking a break is counterintuitive for a lot of people. And a lot of clients I see feel like, no, we need to solve this right now. I'm not going to feel better until we solve this right now. And that's actually not what we want to do. And we also have this saying in our society that's like, never go to bed angry. So we also have this idea that you need to resolve something pretty immediately. But research wise and kind of just best practice wise, that's not what we want to do. So if it's late at night, the best thing to do is actually take a break, take some rest, talk about it in the morning with clearer heads, and go forward.
Awesome.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do is notice when our lid is flipped. And then that's why Dr. Siegel says this is incredibly helpful, is to understand like, oh, these two pieces aren't talking to each other right now. It's okay. Okay, so let's take a break. So typically the break should be somewhere at least 30 minutes because that's how long it takes for some of those cortisol, adrenaline, these
hormones. Oh, wow.
Hormones that pump in when our fight or flight system gets activated to kind of process through the body. Okay. So allowing for that 30-minute break is really important.
So not 5 minutes, not 7 minutes, but really getting.
No.
Okay.
I mean, no. And so I know a lot of people as well will say, okay, one person is ready to come back and discuss and the other person isn't yet. And so what happens oftentimes is one of the people comes, so maybe you, mom, are ready to talk to your teen. I'm feeling calm. I'm here, I'm ready. And they're not ready. And it's reactivating. It's upsetting because it's like, well, why aren't you ready?
Yeah.
You can't avoid this. So kind of understanding that it's not meant to be an avoidance. It's just meant to give both people a bit of time to come back down. So
I like how that takes almost.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Victoria. I was just going to say, I like how it almost, having some understanding of the brain, the way you're describing it, and understanding that kind of depersonalizes it. It's so that I won't take it and make it about me when it's not about me.
Right.
That's helpful.
And also understanding too about the brain that you have control in some ways, even when your lid is flipped, by understanding that that's happening, it's not just like, I'm a person who, when I'm angry, I act out. I'm a person when I'm angry that I just retreat. Understanding that, yes, that's my pattern, but I can catch it and I can re-regulate myself instead of just feeling like that's just who I am.
Okay.
So we take our break. We want it at least 30 minutes up to a day. A day is kind of long and you don't want it to go further than that because we don't want to avoid the conflict. And so oftentimes what happens is parents and teens alike want to avoid the conflict. Once you calm back down, it's kind of like, well, I don't really want to go back in there.
Yep.
But we don't want that to happen because we do want there to be a resolution. So we do want to come back together.
Okay.
But what do you do during that 30 minutes? While you're taking that break is a really interesting and individualized thing. And so it's kind of like, if we think about it, what we're trying to do is turn our rest and digest system on. So another thing I share often in my practice is if we imagine this is like a teeter-totter with one side being rest and digest and the other side being the fight or flight system, they can't be on at the same time. It's a teeter-totter. So when one's on, the other's off. And when one's on, and vice versa. When my fight or flight is on, if I can find ways to activate my rest and digest system, it's going to turn my fight or flight off so that I'm more come back down and be.
I'm ready. Give it to me.
Okay. So we have two different things. We have kind of what do you do in the short term and what are some more longer term practices you can do so that this becomes easier for you over time. In the short term, we might do things like call a friend, take a walk, listen to some music. Kids oftentimes will like watch something funny on YouTube or watch, some show they want to see. It's kind of like, what can I do to help calm my brain down and not get stuck in this circle of frustration, basically?
Yeah. Yeah.
How we talk to ourselves is really important during this time. So instead of feeling like, ooh, they're still in trouble, like we're thinking, I'm going to be able to solve this. Or my kid is probably good meeting. I just need to find out what was happening.
Huh.
Or we all make mistakes. I wonder how I can support them in learning from this one. So the way in which we're also talking to ourselves, both about ourselves, like, Nicole, you're going to be able to figure this out. Victoria, you're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Our long-term goal is to come back together, not to tear apart. So there is a solution we'll find. So talking to ourselves through this is also a really helpful
Okay.
way to help us come back down and feel regulated.
As you're describing it, it's making me think too of kind of pulling back, getting perspective again on what really matters here too, right? Do I want to stay in this argument? Is it really that important? Or what's most valuable here? Well, we don't want to spend the rest of the night being angry with each other. So yeah, so how you talk with yourself, that's also really helpful in kind of reframing how we're going to approach our teen. Yeah, good. Okay.
And what's the most important thing you want out of that conversation? What are you hoping to get out of that conversation? And sometimes what's helpful for me, and this is a little bit more advanced, but it's like, what are you really upset about? Am I upset because I felt like there was a tone of voice I didn't like and that feels disrespectful to me? And is that what we're actually arguing about, or is that a separate issue? So sometimes it's helpful for me to kind of understand, what am I most upset about right now?
Got
Because
it.
oftentimes what happens in our triggers is that sometimes things from the past trigger us. Sometimes just a tone triggers us, and that wasn't their intention, or that wasn't. So sometimes the trigger itself actually is not something that needs to be addressed with the other person, but it's something
Yes.
our own issue, basically,
Right.
our own thing that we don't like being spoke to in that specific tone because it reminds us of this boss or this, so I think it's
Absolutely.
time to reflect on that as well.
That's great. And I'm kind of pulling back, thinking about us being in the pandemic right now too. And it seems like we can have kind of all these layers of frustrations right now, and they can kind of get murky, right? So that probably comes into play too. Like, is this really about the fact that you said you'd take out the garbage and you didn't? Or is it that, I'm still frustrated because I was just told again that we don't know when we're going to go back to the office or something, right? So that's helpful, thinking about, is it really this specific instance that I'm upset about? Maybe I need to step back and really think about what's going on.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
by doing that, if you find that it's not something necessarily that the team didn't take out the trash, and it is something else, then we get to have this wonderful repair attempt when we're back calm. Instead of making a big argument about it, we can come back and say like, hey, I am frustrated that you didn't take out the trash, but also I have a lot on my plate right now and I didn't mean to yell, or I didn't mean to
Yeah.
get upset, and taking ownership of that helps your team feel more trust in you,
Okay.
rather than feeling like my mom's always blaming me for everything. And she, by being able
Right.
to acknowledge the ways in which you have other stressors in life, and the more stressors, like you said, the more we have, the easier it is to flip. And so right now during COVID, because there is so much uncertainty, we have less access to our typical coping mechanisms, like our support systems or our gyms or whatever we might typically do to kind of help reduce our stress load.
Yes. Yes.
We're all operating just a little bit closer to a lid flip. So
Okay.
yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention on this really quickly is, so I said there's some short-term things you can do. Do some breathing, take a walk, watch a TV show. But then there's some other longer-term things that really address what I was just talking about, is the stress load. Is like, how can you keep your stress, or attempt to keep your stress lower, so that you're not so close to flipping or to feeling just like one little thing can set you off. And those are the more longer term commitments. And that's things like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you making time to get outside or get exercise? Are you taking time to socialize whether socially distanced or on the phone or on Zoom with friends.
Yeah.
Like, are you taking care of yourself? Because the less we take care of our physical body, and the less we take care of our kind of emotional, our stress, and move that through, the quicker we are and the more likely we are to be reactive to very little things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really asking about those self-care questions, what we're attempting to do for ourselves. And maybe if the answer for some people's nope, 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 as you're going through that checklist, maybe starting, even in small ways, right? Maybe just thinking about, okay, so no, I'm not exercising regularly, but maybe I could just start taking short walks if that's all I feel I have the time for, is just get out for 10 minutes or something, right? Would you suggest
And
that that's a great way to start, or do you have other thoughts about it, Victoria? Because I know as a parent, sometimes people working full time or they've got multiple kids, it can feel like, yeah, I want to do all those things, but it's challenging, right? So
it is challenging. I think it's small things often, small things as often as you can. And so maybe you're only able to get out for 10 minutes in the morning, but you're able to get that sunshine, for 10 minutes. Or maybe during lunch, you only have 10 minutes to do a quick yoga video, or to ask somebody else in the house to kind of manage, ask for help in regards to dinner or cleaning. Is there anywhere that you can kind of redistribute
yes.
redistribute some load, or find some time for yourself? Yeah, or
Great.
go to bed 10 minutes early. What can we do? Small things add up and make a big impact.
Great. Great. I like that. Spreading the resources, using your resources, spreading the load out, which we
If you
can
can.
forget to do.
Yeah, if you can. Right.
Um, Victoria, do you want to add anything in terms of suggestions around how we can kind of share some of these same tools or skills with our teens, so that maybe if they're a parent one day, they'll be a little bit better at, not being as reactive and being able to, as you say, being able to self-regulate. Do you think this using the same tools, or are there suggestions you have on how we could teach them so that they can feel more,
So,
calm and
yeah, so I think that one of our best teachers is modeling. So the better a parent gets at this, the better their teen will be, because it'll be like, I see my mom improving in her stress levels because she's taking better care of herself, and she's better taking these breaks to self-regulate and not getting so upset. And because she's not living in this kind of upset state, I'm noticing better outcomes with her partner or us. So by watching you do it is one of the best things you can do.
okay.
But besides that, it's a lot of the same things that we were talking about. So you flip, they flip, and then it's kind of like, hey, I think we need a break. Let's come back down. And saying to them, why don't you go take a walk? Why don't you go watch a movie? Why don't you go call your friend? Making it okay to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And naming for them, we're both dysregulated right now, and we both need to do something to come back down. So helping them kind of talk about, what is that for them? Is it taking a hot shower, a long hot shower, taking a bath? Is it playing a little bit of their video game? What is it?
Yeah.
And helping them kind of is it drawing, doing art is one of the big ones I see the kids do a lot, my teens do a lot. So what is it for them? Go play with the pet, go take the pet for a walk. What is it for them? But helping them start to notice in themselves when you notice that they're flipped. And you staying calm when they're flipped is one of the best things you can do as a parent. And what I mean by that is it helps provide a container and safety so that they are able to experience their emotions, and you're helping them calm back down, but also they're not dealing on the other side with the chaos that comes from also having a parent in a non-regulated state. There's a safety that gets built when parents and adults are able to kind of take on some of this emotional wrath that comes sometimes, this emotional emotionality that a lot of teens experience sometimes, because they do experience big emotions and there's a lot going on for them, and they need a safe person who they can talk to and who they don't always have to show up in a way that's well regulated and acting nicely. You know, we want that from our
Yes.
teens, but they're not always capable of it.
And
And
so
so,
we need to stay like
yes,
this, right?
so even if they're like this, we don't flip.
Got
Um,
it. I'm going to be walking around like this
yeah.
now. I am. I'm going to be saying, uh-oh, okay, I'm here. So I'm just letting you know I need to go out there and take a
I'm
walk.
gonna do a little gardening for a little bit. I'm gonna go.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, that is one of mine. So that's a real true statement. Well, this has been really delightful and very helpful.
No, I'm
So
glad.
I'm
Good.
really appreciative of your time and all this great insight that you've shared with us. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Oh, well, good. I'm excited. I hope so. Um, just the last thing I wanted to share is
Yeah.
that Dr. Siegel has this book called Brainstorm, and it's the power and purpose of the teenage brain. And
Okay.
really what he talks about in here is what specific changes is the teenage brain going through, and how does that show up in their lives, and how can we help support that? So like two of them would be social relationships become incredibly important to teenagers. And so they're going to choose kind of looking cool and fitting in over a lot of other things. And so how can we as parents understand that and support that and help it in a healthy way instead of try to change that or try to take that away from them? And the
Okay.
other one is like risk taking. Teens are more likely to take risks because they like the adrenaline and the new, the novelty. How do we as parents, or how can you as parents, support that and keep them safe while also understanding that this is literally a neurological change in their brain during this time that actually does serve a purpose?
Okay.
So for any parents who are interested, this is a book that I always recommend because I think it just gives a lot of insight into what's going on in the brain of teenagers.
Wow. All right. It sounds like it could help open our eyes more to things that are a normal part of development and not just what we think is unique to
That's
our
right.
own teen.
Yeah,
Awesome. So brainstorm.
that's right.
Okay.
The power and purpose of the teenage brain.
The power and the purpose of the teenage brain. All
That's right.
right.
Yeah.
Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Be well. Until
You
next
as
time.
well. Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.